Hello, welcome to week 3 lecture 13. Today we will talk about IPA, International Phonetic Alphabets. So, why do we need IPA? There is a mismatch between grapheme and phoneme. So, we will talk about that and then we will talk about the IPA chart and how the sound symbols are being organized here based on the manner of articulation and pace of articulation. We will also look at various manners of articulation and places of articulation. So, when you write something, you might have noticed that, for example, in English, one letter or one alphabet can represent more than one sound. And this is not only true for Roman script for writing English, but true for most of the scripts that we use to write various languages. For example, when you write apple or air or art, you are using the same alphabet A. So, all of these three words are written with the same alphabet or same letter A. But when you pronounce, you can easily understand the pronunciations are different from each other. In one I am saying apple, so it is clearly a. In other I am saying air, a, so one is a, another is a, and third one is art, art. So, in my previous class I have already talked about different vowels. So, now I am sure you can easily understand that all these three vowel sounds are different, though they are represented by the same alphabet A. But when we focus or when we concentrate on the sound, we can understand that the sounds are different for all these three words. So, this shows us that one letter can be used to represent more than one sound. What we also see is that one letter of course can be used to represent more than one sound, but also different letters can also be used to represent one sound. For that you can see these examples like food, photo, enough. In all these we get first sound, but then first sound is being represented by different alphabets. In one we see the use of F for food, in another we see PH being used for first sound, the third one we see that GH is used for the same first sound enough. So, again we can see that there is a mismatch between grapheme, grapheme is what we write, and phoneme is the sound. So, we can't say that there is one-to-one match between what we write and what we say. So, the sounds or the alphabets do not directly represent the sounds which are articulated, and that is why it can be difficult. Think of a new learner of English. So, he or she will not understand whether to say apple in the same way she can try saying air with air, but then that will be wrong, or art with the same a, at, but again that will not be correct. So, we know that we can't say that only whenever there will be a alphabet a sound or a sound will be used, because there can be variations. And this is not only true for vowel sounds or any sound, for any letters we can see that, and not only true only for English, for other languages also you might see this difference. So, graphemes do not always represent the same sound, there can be variations in the use. So, in English what do we see? We see that there are 26 letters or alphabets, but when we talk about sounds which make difference in the meaning in English, there are around 44 unique sounds. I say approximately or around 44 because depending on the varieties of English it may change a little, but this directly shows that there is no one-to-one match. We have more sounds than we have letters to represent those sounds. That means that there will not be any one-to-one match. So, when we see this problem across the languages and across the scripts, we have a solution for that. And when we are talking about written languages, we talk about this problem, but then there are also various other languages which do not even have their script. So, either these languages are not represented in a written form, or they borrow scripts from other languages to be written. In both the cases, we do not see exact grapheme representing the sound systems of those languages. So, what do we see as a solution? There is International Phonetic Alphabets. So, these set of alphabets which was developed by International Phonetic Association represents one sound, one alphabet represents one sound. So, there is no mismatch ever. So, there are set of certain symbols and all these symbols stand for one sound. So, each symbol stands for one sound. There can never be variation in that. We can never say that this symbol can stand for sound A and sound B both. It will always stand for one particular sound. So, each sound and each symbol are unique to that particular sound. And not only that, this chart also shows the articulation process. So, this chart is not only about the unique symbols which it represents for unique sounds, it also stands for the description of the articulation. So, looking at this chart, one can also know about the place of articulation and manner of articulation. So, I will talk about the place of articulation, but before that let me take you to the chart where you can actually see this IPA chart. So, this is the IPA chart I am talking about. Here you can see that these are the manners of articulation. I have already discussed about manners of articulation, where I have talked manner of articulation means the process in which the air is blocked in the mouth and then taken out. And these are the places of articulation, which means the place where the air is blocked before it is released. This is the case for consonant. And you can also see the vowel chart here, which I have already discussed in the last class. So, vowel chart also shows the places of articulation. Along with that, we have some other diacritics which I will talk about after some time. So, before that, you can have a quick look at this chart and you can see how different symbols have been used, and each symbol, if I want to talk or if I want to describe pa, I will say it is a plosive bilabial consonant. So, not only there is unique symbol for each of the sounds, but also the description is there. Looking at the chart, one can describe each of the symbol or each of the sounds. So, now let us look at each of the process. Let us look at the various places of articulation, what do we mean by all these terms, and also the manners of articulation. So, I will again come back and show you the places of articulation. So, now you can see that these are the places of articulation. Here starting from the first one, you can see that bilabial, when I say bilabial, that means both the lips are used. So, both the lips are used to produce or block the air before it is released, and this is, those sounds are called bilabial, where both the lips are in the process of articulation. Then, as the name suggests, labiodental, lip and the teeth is used to produce sounds like f, where the lip is hitting the teeth and blocking the air there before releasing it. Then there are sounds which are called dental. The tongue hits the teeth, and when the tongue hits the teeth, it blocks the air and then it is released. Those sounds are dental sounds like th, th. Now, slowly the places are going backwards towards your mouth. So, when we talk about alveolar sounds, those are at the upper part of your mouth. So, in the picture you can see this part is the alveolar ridge, this is the alveolar ridge. So, here the tongue hits the alveolar ridge to block the air before it is released, and then we have alveolar sounds. Again the tongue is going backwards and you can have post alveolar, and likewise we now further can't take our tongue backwards and then we start raising the back part of our tongue. So, for retroflex we can actually take our tongue backwards and we can produce sounds like r, where you can see that the tip of the tongue is going backwards. So, earlier we saw that in alveolar ridge in the frontal part the tongue was hitting, and now the tongue is coming towards the back portion and blocking the air to produce retroflex sounds like r. Further we go and we produce palatal sounds like ch. So, now we can't take our tongue backwards further, right, that is not possible for humans. So, what do? We raise our tongue a little and block the air and we produce sounds like ch. Then again further back and the velum is used to produce velar sounds. You can see uvula which is here, and from here the air is blocked here and then we have uvular sound, and further back when we block the air here we can produce pharyngeal sounds which are very difficult to produce for those who do not have these sounds in their native language. And then we have glottal sounds from this portion of the mouth where the glottis actually tries to block the air and then it is released to produce glottal sounds. So, these are the various places of articulation. So, when I talked about IPA, you saw lots of symbols there, but let me also tell you that all the symbols or all the sounds are not present in all the languages. So, some of the sounds are present in some languages while other set of sounds are present in other languages. So, what we see in the chart is all the possible sounds for a language. So, all these sounds are possible for humans to articulate, and those sounds can be part of any language. Now, let us look at in details. If you want to see, you can see here that how bilabial is explained with or uttered or articulated with the help of two lips. You can see the examples here, peat, beat. Labiodental, as I mentioned, with the involvement of the lower lip and the upper teeth. We have fur. Please do not confuse fur with purr. Purr is a bilabial sound where we are using two of our lips and we are saying purr, purr, purr. How purr is different from purr? I will come to that, but labiodental is lower lip and teeth, and then we are saying fur. So, fool in English is different from phool in Hindi or in many of the Indo-Aryan languages. So, fur is labiodental, and then we have we take the tip of our tongue to the upper portion of our mouth and we produce sounds like t, tip, dip. So, these are called alveolar sounds. Again the tip of the tongue curled back and we have retroflex sounds like r, and the blade of the tongue raising towards the alveolar ridge and the front of the hard palate, we produce palatoalveolar sounds like sh. And palatal, for palatal we move further backwards, front of the tongue and the hard palate, hitting the hard palate, y, like yes, y. So, the tip of the tongue is not used here, you can understand that only the middle part of the tongue is actually raising up. It is not the tip of the tongue like retroflex sound where we produce sound like r. So, it is very easy or convenient to understand if you also try to produce these sounds. So, you know the process how to produce, you know which are the articulators involved in the process. So, it is very easy if you try to use those articulators and try to produce these sounds, because when you produce you understand better that what articulators those are involved in the process. At the end you can also see there is a link given where you can click and you can look at the interactive IPA chart where you can click on the symbols and listen to the sounds. So, that way also you can practice to know better about the IPA symbols and the articulation process. So, coming back to this, you can see the velar sounds which are produced by back of the tongue and the velum. So, back of the tongue actually raises a little k, g. So, the back of the tongue and velum is used to block the air before it is released, because we are talking about consonants and you know that while producing consonants we need to stop the air, we need to block the air somewhere in our oral cavity, and then we produce velous sounds. And then we have labiovelous sounds, which again uses both lips and raising of the back of the tongue. Glottal are produced with the vocal cords. So, the air is blocked there. So, we have sounds like where from this portion here we are actually blocking the sound air to produce glottal sounds. So, glottal stops are often confused with the normal stops like p or like or with vowels they are confused like a vowel, but is a vowel while glottal stops are consonants where we are actually blocking the air like a. So, these were about the place of articulation. Now, let us talk about the manner of articulation. So, you know that all these articulators are actually blocking the air somewhere in our mouth, but then in each of the process the way in which the air is released after being obstructed is different, and that is why the combination of place of articulation and manner of articulation actually creates unique sounds. There are certain sounds called plosive. Plosive, bilabial plosive, pa is a bilabial plosive. In plosive, what do we do? The articulators, when I talk about bilabial plosive, then both of our lips, they are the articulators, they come together to block the air, and the air is blocked momentarily and then suddenly it is released. Abruptly there is a release of the air, and that is why we produce sounds like p, b, k, g. So, these type of sounds are produced. So, plosives are also called stops, but nasals are not plosives, because in nasal air is stopped in the oral cavity, but comes out from the nasal cavity. So, in nasals what we see m, n. So, if you articulate m, n, you will realize that some portion of the air is coming out from your nose, and that is why these sounds are called nasal sounds. Then we have trills. So, trills are those sounds which you might have seen children making sounds when they act as if they are driving bikes or something. So, r, r. So, those trill type of sounds are called trill. So, what happens here? The tip of the tongue actually hits the position behind the teeth ridge, and so it actually bangs repeatedly. So, it is not only one hit, it continues the process, but it is very fast, and then we produce that trilling effect. So, we have sounds like r, r. Okay. So, some languages do have these sounds. Then we have another type of sounds which are again produced with the tip of the tongue hitting the teeth or the upper portion of our mouth, which is alveolar ridge. Here the tip of the tongue comes near the teeth or the alveolar ridge to block the air, and then it releases it, and we have sounds like r, the very common r which is used in most of the Indian languages, r, or it is also there in English, r. So, then coming to fricative, fricatives are very interesting. What happens in fricative? The articulators come close to block the air, but then when they come close to block the air, there is no total blockage of the air. Some portion of the air comes out from the escapes out actually. So, there is no total blockage of the air. So, some portion of the air comes out, and that is why we have some release of the air is there before the exact release, and that is why we have sounds like f, sh, z. So, if you try to say z, you will listen, you can understand or you can feel that hissing or that noisy part before the actual utterance of the sound z. So, when you produce z or s, so before the exact production of the sound s, you can listen to that sound s, z. For z also you will find the same thing. So, these sounds where there is the air is not totally blocked, the articulators they try to block the air, but still some air manage to come out or escape from the blockage, those sounds are called fricatives. And then in approximant sounds, what we find is that the articulators are brought near each other, but there is some gap to escape, the air again escapes. So, here the escape is more. In fricative also I mentioned that the air escapes, but here the escape of the air is not so much as in approximant. Approximant sounds are like year, year. So, year you can easily understand that when you are saying z and when you are saying year, in z the articulators are closer and they can actually block the air more than the sound year. Now, coming to laterals, in laterals what do we find is that the tongue obstructs the air at the center of the mouth, but the sides of the tongue are left low, so that air can come out from it, and we have sounds like l, l, l. So, when you are saying l, you can easily understand that the tip of the tongue is coming to the upper portion of our mouth, but then the sides are open for air to come out. So, air can easily come out. So, air comes out and we have sounds like l. There can be two types of laterals, one is lateral approximant and one is lateral fricative. The main difference between the two is that the closure in one is more, while the closure in another is less. So, in fricatives, as I mentioned, the amount of air escapes is lesser than the approximant. So, same thing we also see in lateral approximants and lateral fricatives. In lateral fricatives, the amount of air which escapes is lesser than the amount of air which escapes in lateral approximants. So, in lateral approximants, more air actually comes out before the release of the exact sound, but in lateral fricatives less amount of air comes out before the exact release. In both, the air actually comes out when the air is blocked by the articulators. So, these were about the manners of articulation. So, these are some of the suggested readings, but before that I will also again take you to the IPA chart, where you can see some of the diacritics. So, I will talk about those. You can see that these are the manners of articulation, these are the places of articulation which I have talked, but some of you might wonder why there this are in gray shades, why we see so much of gray shades here. This is because these sounds are not possible for humans to articulate. So, if one says that I have a nasal glottal in my language, do not believe her, because that is not possible for humans to articulate. So, when you see these gaps, these gray areas, this means that these sounds are not possible in human language. Again, you can see some of the boxes which are not in gray, but they are blank. Why so? Because these sounds are possible for humans to articulate, but these are not found in languages. So, till now we have not found these type of sounds in any of the languages, or it has not been noticed. That is why these are kept blank. So, there can be these type of sounds in certain languages, but we have not found that yet. Okay. Now, you see that for alveolar you have only one sound, t, d, one sound or one symbol, you can see t and d. So, now when we talk about this pair, when you see p, b or t, d, you know that these are about voiceless and voiced sounds. So, p is voiceless, b is voiced, which I have already mentioned in the last class. So, these pairs show the difference between voicing. When you talk about alveolar, you see t, d, but in many of the Indian languages we do not have alveolar sounds. What we have is dental, but we do not have a symbol for dental. What do? We use diacritics. So, we use this t symbol, but we use a small tooth like symbol as diacritic. We mark it in the below the t written. So, that shows that this is dental t, this is not alveolar t, this is dental t. Likewise, we have many of the diacritic symbols here, which can modify these set of sounds or these basic set of consonants or vowel sounds to show the changes or to show the exact sound symbols. Like you can see there is a diacritic symbol for making a sound nasal. So, nasalized. So, when vowels become nasalized, we know generally vowels are not nasalized, they are oral vowels. But when vowels become nasalized, we can use this curvy thing on the top of the symbol to show the vowel is nasalized. Same symbol can also be used for any other symbol to mark it as nasal sound. Similarly, we have other sounds like aspiration, aspirated sounds. Aspirated sounds are very common in say Indo-Aryan languages. So, aspiration is basically the air is taken out more, there is the puff of the air is with a force and more quantity of air comes out. So, I am saying t and then I am saying th, or I am saying p and I am saying p. So, when I am saying f, or if you try to articulate f, you can understand that in p you are basically putting more effort, putting more force. So, more air is coming out of your mouth. In those cases the sounds become aspirated. So, aspirated sounds, how do we write it? We write a superscript h on top of the symbol. So, t becomes th, d becomes dh. So, these are aspirated symbols. So, likewise we have different diacritic symbols to modify each of these basic sound symbols to show the accurate sounds. So, now also remember that all these symbols they show one particular sound. So, this symbol or this symbol when I say k is for k sound. So, it will never stand for, it will never be silent like we do in say night in English or knife in English. So, whenever I am writing k in IPA, it has always to be articulated as k sound. Neither it can be silenced nor it can show or represent any other sound. So, likewise for all these symbols stand for one particular sound. All these symbols have their own particular sound, which you can go to the link which I have shared in the suggested readings, and there you can click and listen to each of the sounds to know the difference. I would also suggest that you even try to articulate each of those sounds, so that you know the exact articulation process and also you know how they are different from one another. So, that is very important to know for both the consonants and the vowels. And in the process you can also explore different diacritic symbols to know about these all. Initially those sounds which are not part of our native language, it is difficult for us to articulate those sounds because those are not part of our language. We are more comfortable in articulating those sounds which are part of our native language or which are part of the languages which we know. But then there are different other sounds which may not be part of the languages which we speak, but can be part of some other language which we do not know. So, at times it is difficult for us to produce those sounds and also to perceive those sounds. Maybe both the sounds will look similar to me, because I do not differentiate or my language do not differentiate between those two sounds. So, those two sounds may seem to be same for me. So, t, th might look similar for some of the speakers, but it will never look similar sound or same sound to a Hindi speaker, because for Hindi speaker t and th both contribute in the meaning. But in some other language, for example, in English, if I say k or kh, it does not matter if I say cat or if I say cat with kh, it does not matter, the meaning is same. So, they may perceive it as one single sound. K and kh can be perceived as one sound, because the native speakers do not see any difference in the meaning, but for a Hindi speaker the difference is very important because it contributes to the meaning. So, I will again request you all to practice this IPA chart with the sound symbols. You can see here the link which you can click and listen to the sounds. So, that is all for today. Thank you.